Vivid verses.
I had been with Kara for 14 months when she said that to me. It was a Tuesday in the third week of October, just after 7 in the evening. I had come home late, again, from a project I've been carrying largely alone since August, when our team lost 2 people in the same week, and I'd absorbed both workloads without complaint and without telling anyone how I was doing it. I remember setting my bag down by the kitchen door and washing my hands at the sink, and she was sitting at the table with a glass of wine and her phone, and she said it the way you say something you've been waiting all day to say. She said it like she was doing me a favor. I stood at the sink with the water still running, and I didn't turn around immediately. I let the water run for a few more seconds, 5, maybe 6, and I thought about the weekend before when I'd driven 2 hours each way to help her move her sister's furniture because her sister's boyfriend had bailed at the last minute. I thought about the birthday dinner I'd organized for her in September, coordinating with 7 of her friends across 3 different schedules, spending 4 hours on the phone and $340 I hadn't mentioned. I thought about the story she was referring to, a story about my grandfather, a real story, a story I had told at dinner with her friends 2 weeks ago, and the way her expression had shifted just slightly when her friend Becca had laughed too warmly at it. I turned off the water. She's been sitting on that for 2 weeks. Minimum. I turned around. She was looking at her phone. She wasn't looking at me, which meant she'd already decided how the rest of this scene was going to go. My confused defense, her patient clarification, the whole theater of it. Okay, I said. She looked up. I'm just being honest. I heard you. I went to the refrigerator and took out the container of leftovers I'd made Sunday night. The ones she'd had twice already and told me were the best things she'd eaten in months. I put them in the microwave. She went back to her phone. The machine hummed. She said people notice. Not one person. People. That's not observation. That's a consensus she's already built. I ate my dinner and asked her about her day, and she told me, and we cleaned up together, and she kissed me goodnight at 10:30 and fell asleep easily, the way people do when they haven't been carrying anything. I lay awake until nearly 2 in the morning. Not because I was hurt, not because I was angry. Those would have been clean emotions, quick to metabolize, easy to move through. What kept me awake was the feeling of a pattern clicking into place. Not a new pattern, but one that had been forming for months and had just revealed its shape. People notice. That was not a woman having a bad day. That was a woman who had been talking. The question was, how long? And to whom? And what exactly she had been saying. I am not a person who reconstructs things with malice. I'm a person who reconstructs things accurately, which is a different thing entirely, though the results can look similar from the outside. I sat in my car in the parking garage at work the next afternoon, and I opened the Notes app on my phone, and I started a list. Not of grievances, a timeline, and the specific, countable things I had put into 14 months with Kara, and what I had received back, and where the numbers did not balance. I had paid for 11 of our last 13 dinners out. I know this because I pay attention to these things and because I checked my card statements that morning. Not because I'm minded, because patterns require data. I had covered the full cost of the trip we took in June, $2,240, flights and accommodation, because she was between projects and I said it was a gift and I meant it. She had not mentioned it since. I had spent 3 Saturdays helping her paint and reorganize her home office, which she'd wanted redesigned for months. We started in April and finished in early May. She bought the paint and I bought the brushes, the tape, the drop cloths, the rollers, and 2 new shelving units she said she'd pay me back for. The total was $318. The payment never came. When I mentioned it once, gently, she said she hadn't realized I was keeping score. Keeping score. That phrase. Filed. I had introduced her to 4 of my closest friends over the course of the relationship. Tom in February, Becca and her husband Rob in April, and my friend Lena in September. These were people I trusted. People who knew me well enough to have opinions about who I brought into my life. I remembered, now that I was looking, that each introduction had been followed by a quiet shift. Nothing dramatic. Nothing I could have named in the moment. But Tom had been warmer before he met Kara than after. Becca and Rob had started declining plans, twice in August, once in September, after being reliably available for 2 years. And Lena, who I'd known since college, who had texted me constantly since I moved near her 3 years ago, had gone oddly quiet in October. I had attributed these things to the natural drift of adult friendships. The way schedules fill and priorities shift and nobody means anything by it. I was wrong. I kept going. I thought about the stories. My grandfather's story, which she'd called a fabrication. The story about my first job, which I told at dinner with her coworkers in July, and which she'd quietly corrected twice, in front of everyone, with a smile that said she was just clarifying. The time she'd laughed when I mentioned a professional success to her friend Dana and said, "He's very modest about the parts that didn't work out." Dana had nodded like she already knew the parts that didn't work out. She didn't. She had no way of knowing, unless someone had told her. She's been doing this the whole time. Not occasionally. Systematically. That word, systematically, was the word that stopped me. Not a bad habit. Not insecurity expressing itself sideways. A system. A quiet, consistent, ongoing project of making me smaller in every room she introduced me to, so that the version of me people knew was already diminished before I opened my mouth. I sat in the parking garage for 40 minutes. By the end of it, I had counted 9 specific instances across 14 months. I had estimated the financial asymmetry at somewhere between $4,000 and $4,500 in my direction, not counting the time, the driving, the Saturday afternoons with a paint roller. And I had identified 4 relationships, Tom, Becca, and Rob. Lena, where the shift in behavior corresponded directly with contact with Kara. I closed the Notes app. She thinks she's building something. She's been building something. She just doesn't know I can read the blueprints. I was not going to raise my voice. I was not going to accuse her of anything. I was not going to explain myself more than once or ask her to see things my way or beg for an accounting that she would never give honestly. I was going to wait. I was going to watch. And I was going to let the structure she'd built show itself to the people she'd built it around. One thing at a time. The first thing was Tom. I texted Tom on a Thursday and asked if he wanted to grab a beer. Just us, something we'd done every couple of months for 4 years before Kara. He said yes, quickly, which told me something. We met at a bar near his place on a Friday night, a small place with booths in the back, and we ordered and caught up for 20 minutes, and then I waited. Tom is a direct person. He gets to things. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. Is everything okay with you? Like, at work?" Or he stopped. Recalibrated. Kara said some stuff a couple months ago that made me think things weren't great. There it is. I set my glass down. "What kind of stuff?" He looked uncomfortable. "Just that you've been struggling. Like, professionally. And that you've been stressed and maybe not totally yourself." He paused. She said it with a lot of concern. Like she was worried about you. Of course she did. Concern is the perfect packaging. Did she give you specifics? I asked. She mentioned the Hargrove account. He said it carefully, like he wasn't sure if it was a sore subject. The Hargrove account was a project I'd successfully closed in July. The largest individual deal my team had made in 2 years. My manager had sent a company-wide email about it. I had told Kara about it the night it happened, over dinner, and she had toasted me with her wine glass and said she was proud of me. "What about it?" I said. Tom frowned. She said it almost didn't happen, that there had been some issue and you'd nearly lost it. "Did she tell you how it resolved?" He shook his head slowly. I took a sip of my beer. The Hargrove account closed on July 14th. Full contract, no amendments. My manager mentioned it in the all hands on the 18th. I paused. I can forward you the email if you want context. Tom was quiet for a long moment. She made it sound like, I know, I said. Did she tell you what started this between us? He looked up. What do you mean? She made a comment last week. I'm trying to figure out where it came from. Did she tell you anything that might have prompted it? No, he said, slowly. She talks about you sometimes. It's always wrapped in concern. Like she cares, but she's, I don't know, worried. I appreciate you telling me, I said, and I meant it. I picked up my glass. How's your sister doing? You mentioned she was looking at grad schools. He blinked at the gear shift, but followed it. We talked for another hour. When we left, he hugged me the way he used to, long, with a back pat, and I registered it without letting anything show. 7 years of friendship, and she almost had him. The second thing was Lena. Lena called me on a Sunday. I hadn't reached out. She'd called on her own, which told me either something had cracked or she was calling to deliver a message. I answered on the second ring. I need to tell you something, she said. Go ahead. I had brunch with Cara last weekend. I kept my voice completely level. How was it? She talked about you for most of it. A pause. Owen, she another pause longer. She had a lot to say. Lena is choosing her words. She's already conflicted. Did she tell you what started this? I asked. She didn't say there was a this. She just said she'd been worried about you. That you'd been. She used the word embellishing. She said you had a pattern of. Lena. I said her name once, quietly. Did she mention that she told Tom that the Hargrove account almost fell apart? Silence. Tom told you that? She said finally. He did. Another silence. Owen. I recorded part of it by accident. Her voice had changed. I had my phone on the table and the voice memo app was running. I'd been using it earlier. I didn't realize until I was going through my phone Monday night. She recorded it. I didn't say anything immediately. I let the sentence sit in the air between us. How much of it? I said. 14 minutes. Maybe 15. Okay. Do you want me to? Yes. She sent it that night. I did not listen to it right away. I made dinner. I did the dishes. I sat on the couch for a while with a book I didn't read. And then, at about 9:30, I put in one earbud and pressed play. 14 minutes and 22 seconds. Cara's voice was the voice I knew, warm, measured, the voice she used when she wanted to be taken seriously. She was talking to Lena and to two other women whose voices I half recognized as friends of Lena's, people I'd met once or twice. And she was talking about me. She said I had a habit of rewriting my own history. She said I sometimes couldn't tell the difference between what had actually happened and what I wished had happened. She said it with great sadness. She said it with the patience of someone who had been carrying this knowledge for a long time and wasn't sure who to tell. She mentioned the Hargrove account. She mentioned a dispute with a former manager that I described once, accurately, as a disagreement about strategy, and she reframed it as evidence of a pattern of professional conflict. She mentioned my grandfather's story and said she'd done some research, and she wasn't sure the details added up. She said she wasn't trying to be unkind. She said she cared about me deeply, and that was exactly why it worried her. She named Tom. She named Becca. She named 3 other people I'd introduced her to over the course of the relationship. And she noted, with practiced subtlety, that several of them had mentioned finding some of my stories a little hard to follow. She had been doing this for 14 months. With everyone, I listened to the whole recording without moving. When it was done, I took out the earbud and set my phone on the coffee table. 14 months. 14 months, and she was always at brunch, always on the phone, always at a dinner table with someone I trusted. And I was always somewhere else, not knowing the room had already been prepared. I sat there for a long time, not with anger. I want to be precise about this. Anger is a reaction to surprise, and I was no longer surprised. What I felt was the particular quiet of a thing finally confirmed. The way a doctor feels, I imagine, when a test result comes back and says exactly what the symptoms already indicated. I went to bed at 11. In the morning, I woke up at 6:15 and made coffee. 2 cups, the way I always did. I set hers on the table in front of her usual chair. She came out of the bedroom at 6:40, still in her pajamas, surprised to see me already up. "Morning," she said. "Morning." I nodded at her cup. "Coffee's hot." She sat down. She wrapped her hands around the mug. She looked at me over the rim of it with the easy expression of someone who had no idea what morning it was. "I know about the brunch conversation," I said. "The one with Lena. 3 Saturdays ago." She went very still. "I think we both know what happens next," I said. I picked up my cup and went to the window and looked out at the backyard, and I waited for her to decide what kind of person she was going to be in the next 60 seconds. She did not go quietly. I had not expected her to. She said that I was blowing things out of proportion. She said that she had been expressing concern, genuine concern, to people who cared about me, and that I was characterizing something loving as something sinister, and didn't that say something about how I receive care? She said she was sorry if it had come across wrong, but I had to understand where she was coming from. She's rephrasing. Watch her. She won't address the recording. She won't touch it. "Did you tell Tom that the Hargrove account almost fell apart?" I asked. She opened her mouth. "Closed it." I said there had been some stress around it. "It closed on July 14th. Full contract. My manager emailed the company." I showed you the email. "I know you did. Did you tell Tom it almost didn't happen?" A pause. "I may have characterized it. Owen, I was worried about you. You were stressed for weeks before it closed." I said. "The account closed anyway." I looked at her steadily. "Did you tell Lena's friends that my story about my grandfather doesn't add up?" The color shifted in her face slightly. I said I wasn't sure about some of the details. His name was Harold Marsh. He worked for 31 years at a textile company in the same town he was born in. He retired in 1987 and he died in 2004. I have a photograph of him on the floor of that factory taken in 1973. I can show it to you. She was quiet. "I know you weren't being malicious," I said. "That's probably even true. But I also know what those conversations were. And so do you." She started crying, then, carefully, not the falling apart kind, the controlled kind, the kind that comes when someone realizes the ground under them has changed and they need to find a new footing. She said she loved me. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't realized how it would land. She'd just been venting. She hadn't thought about how it would sound to other people. I listened to all of it. She said venting. Venting is one conversation. This was 14 months. "I heard you." I said, "I think we should take some time apart." She looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time that morning. "How much time?" "I don't know yet." She left that afternoon to stay at her sister's. The calls started within 48 hours. Her friend Dana called first. I didn't know Dana well. We'd had dinner twice, once with a group and once as a foursome with Kara's other friend Maggie. Dana's voice on the phone was careful, friend of a friend careful. The voice of someone who's been asked to make a call they're not totally sure about. She said Kara was devastated. She said it seemed like things had escalated very quickly, and she just wanted to make sure I understood how much Kara cared. She said Kara had always spoken about me with such love. I'll let her finish. She's working from Kara's version. She doesn't know about the recording. She doesn't know about Tom. "Did Kara tell you what started this?" I asked. A pause. She said there was a misunderstanding. "Did she tell you specifically what the misunderstanding was?" Another pause, longer. She said you'd heard something out of context. "Did she tell you what I heard?" Silence. "Dana, I appreciate the call. I mean that." I kept my voice warm and even. "I'm going to let this settle before I talk much more about it. I hope you understand." She said she did, uncertainly, and we hung up. Maggie texted that same evening. A long text, the kind where every sentence is a little more pointed than the last, about how Kara was going through so much and how sometimes in relationships we misread things when we're stressed, and maybe I should think about whether this reaction was proportionate. I read it twice. Proportionate. She used that word. I wrote back. Did she tell you what started this? For words. I pressed send and put my phone in a kitchen drawer. She responded the next morning. She said you heard a conversation out of context. I wrote back. Did she tell you specifically what was in the conversation? No response after that. Her coworker Renata, who I had met at a work event at Kara's and had liked genuinely, warm, funny, the kind of person who remembers your name 3 months later, called on Wednesday. She said she'd heard things were rough. She said Kara was a good person who sometimes didn't know how things landed. That's the most honest thing anyone said so far. Renata, did she tell you what started this? She said you overheard something. Did she tell you who else was in that conversation? A pause. No. Or what was said? No. I appreciate you calling, I said. I really do. Can I ask you something? A pause just long enough to let her feel the shift in weight. Has Kara ever mentioned my work to you? In the context of some professional difficulty? A long silence. She mentioned, once, that you'd had some struggles. With the Hardrove account? The silence this time was different. Heavier. She may have mentioned that. That account closed in July, I said. Full contract. Largest deal my team made in 2 years. I didn't say anything else. I let that sit. Renata was quiet for almost 10 seconds. Owen, she said finally. I know, I said. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'll talk to you soon. Her friend Becca's husband Rob called on Thursday. Not Becca. Rob, which already told me something. Rob was a careful person, an engineer, someone who organized information before deploying it. He asked how I was doing, and I said fine, and we spent a few minutes on that before he said what he'd called to say. Becca wanted me to reach out. She wanted me to tell you that she thinks you should try to work this out. I appreciate her saying that. He stopped. This is me, not Becca. I just want to say that I think Kara is someone who maybe doesn't realize how things come across. I don't think she's another stop. I don't think she means it the way it lands. He's distancing himself from the message he was sent to deliver. Rob, I said, did Kara tell you about the conversation at brunch? Not in detail. She said there was a recording and that things had been taken out of context. Did she say who was at the brunch? Lena, I think. And some of Lena's friends. Did she tell you what was in the recording? He was quiet. Did she tell you she talked about the Hardrove account? I asked. Or about my grandfather? A longer silence. No, she didn't. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, I said. But I want you to know that if you and Becca have any questions, real questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, he said quietly. Thank you for calling, Rob. Tell Becca I said hi. Friday afternoon, unexpectedly, Lena called again. This call was different. I want you to know, she said without preamble, that I've been thinking about this all week. And I think I've been thinking about the other times. Other brunches. Other conversations. She paused. This wasn't the first time she's talked about you like this. I didn't put it together until I heard myself playing it back. There it is. Her own inner circle. I know, I said, and my voice stayed level and I meant it, and I felt for the first and only time in all of this something that might have been something like grief, not for what Kara had done, but for the 14 months I had spent in a version of my own life that wasn't quite the real one. A version slightly smaller, slightly dimmer, with the edges already sanded down before anyone else arrived. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, Lena said. You said something when you needed to. Oh, and I don't think she knows she does it. Neither do I. And I'm not sure it matters. Maybe not, I said. But it was happening either way. That evening, Kara called. Not a text, a call, which meant she'd worked herself up to it. "I need you to understand that I have never tried to hurt you," she said. Her voice was higher than usual, faster. "I have never done anything in our relationship that wasn't out of love, and the fact that you're treating this like I'm some kind of like I was running a campaign against you. I don't think you're a bad person," I said. "Then why are you doing this?" "Because what I heard in that recording wasn't concern," I said. "It was a version of me that you'd been building with other people for over a year. A version where I embellish things, where my professional wins are partial, when my stories don't add up. That's not worry. That's architecture." I paused. "I've been very precise with you about what I know. I don't think there's anything more to say." "So that's it." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I think we both know what happens next," I said again. "I said it the morning you left. I meant it." She hung up. She hung up. And the quiet after it is the first quiet in 14 months that feels entirely mine. 2 weeks later, Kara asked to meet. I said yes. We met at a coffee shop near the neighborhood where we'd both lived, a small place with mismatched chairs and a chalkboard menu. The kind of place neither of us had been to before, so neither of us owned the room. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping perfectly, but she sat up straight. She held her mug in both hands. She had come prepared, and I registered that and let it mean what it meant. "I've been in therapy," she said without being asked. "I started 2 weeks ago, twice a week." I nodded. "I talked to Tom," she said. "I called him and I told him that I had characterized your Hardrove account inaccurately and that I was sorry for the way I'd framed it. I also called Becca." She paused. "I told her the same thing. I told her the story about your grandfather was true and that I said some unfair things about it. At brunch and other times. Okay. I told Renata and Dana." She pressed her lips together. She reached in her bag and took out an envelope and set it on the table. "The shelving units and the other things from the office project." I looked at the envelope. $318, she said. I looked up the receipts. "I know it's been a long time." She looked up the receipts. She knew the number. I picked up the envelope and put it in my jacket pocket without opening it. "I want you to know," she said, "that I've been trying to understand why I did it. I don't have a clean answer yet. My therapist says it's a pattern that has to do with needing to be the most important person in someone's perception of you, where I shrink the other person so they need me." She said the last part like it tasted bad. "I'm not telling you that to ask for anything. I wanted you to hear me say I know what it was." I looked at her for a moment. She came here with receipts. Literally. She came here having already made the calls. She's not building up to a reversal. She's past it. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I'm in it." "Is there anything?" She stopped. Started again. "Is there anything you want to say to me?" I thought about it. "You said I make things up a little," I said. "That people notice." She closed her eyes briefly. "People do notice things," I said. "They notice what you told them. And then they noticed when it didn't hold up." I paused. "I think that's worth carrying forward." She opened her eyes. For a moment, she looked exactly like what she was. Someone who had spent 14 months quietly building a small false world and was now sitting in what remained of it. "I know," she said. "I know it is." Our drinks were empty. The coffee shop was starting to fill up with a late afternoon crowd. I put on my jacket. "Take care of yourself, Kara." "You too." Her friend Maggie texted me a week later. Out of nowhere, Kara told us what really happened. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry I wasn't more careful." I wrote back, "Thank you. I meant that too." Tom had already texted 3 days after the coffee shop meeting. He said Kara had called him. He said he appreciated it. He said he wanted to schedule a proper catch-up soon. Just us, the way we used to. 7 years of friendship. She almost had it. But almost is the distance between a story that holds and one that doesn't. I've thought about what the record shows when you step back from the feeling of it and just look at the structure. 14 months of being quietly, systematically made smaller in every room I walked into. And the strange thing is, none of it worked. The stories I told were still true. The Hargrove account still closed. My grandfather's photograph is still on my bookshelf in a silver frame. Him at 32 years old on the floor of that factory, squinting a little against the light. The people who mattered came back, not because I persuaded them, but because the architecture she'd built couldn't hold its own weight. What I learned is this: a person who genuinely trusts themselves doesn't need to rewrite someone else. The compulsion to diminish is always a confession. And the clearest sign you're winning an argument you never chose to have is the moment the other person's version of reality has to be continuously maintained, while yours just stands there, requiring nothing. She said I make things up a little. That people notice. People noticed, just not the way she meant.
Thanks for listening.